We've already had a look at some crazy conspiracy theories. Those ideas range from people who believe the moon didn't exist and people who believe that the US government was a bunch of lizards. While there are a lot of conspiracy theories that sound ludicrous and crazy, some of them have actually turned out to be true. For that reason, I've decided to compile a list of just that. So sit back, relax, grab some scrambled eggs, and join me for 10 crazy conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. Number 10. The CIA's involvement of cocaine smuggling. The United States Central Intelligence Agency have had countless theories made about them, accusing them of doing some shady shit. Well, some of those theories turned out to be true, and one of them is their involvement in cocaine smuggling for their own benefit. The Contras are a terrorist rebel group based in Nicaragua. They were given financial and military aid from the United States. However, due to their violent tactics, Congress banned further aid. However, having this group as an ally was very important to the Reagan administration. Certain journalists accused the CIA of continuing to help the terrorist group. These were dismissed as conspiracy theories. However, it turned out to be true. The CIA had been much more compliant with the Contras smuggling drugs in and out of the United States. They had done so behind Congress's back and made a hefty 600 mil in the meantime. Number 9 is the Tonkin Incident. The Tonkin Incident was an incident in which a Vietnamese ship and an American ship went head to head. The first attack occurred on August 2nd of 1964 when an American ship radioed in to say that they were being attacked from a Vietnamese torpedo boat. The American ship retaliated and 4 Vietnamese sailors lost their lives. 2 days later, the NSA had claimed that a second attack occurred, and the outcome of these two confrontations led the president, Lyndon B. Johnson, the authority to declare war on Vietnam. The war resulted in the loss of 1.3 million lives. However, many journalists and skeptics came forward to say that they did not believe the original escalation was detailed correctly. And they were correct. The first attack is now considered to be widely exaggerated, and the second attack is actually considered to be completely fabricated by the NSA. Who else but the NSA, eh? Keeping us safe. Number 8 is the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, an incredibly controversial experiment that occurred between 1932 and 1972. 600 African American males were told that they were being given free healthcare. At first, this was true until they lost funding. They continued to do their research, which was revolved around seeing if African American males were affected by syphilis differently than others. 399 of the 600 men involved in the experiment had syphilis at the time, however weren't being treated. When some of the men came back to complain about their health difficulties, the doctors dismissed it. Eventually, certain whistleblowers made sure that this project was abandoned.
What the United States government did was shameful, and I am sorry.
Number 7 is Operation Snow White. In the 1970s, the Church of Scientology weren't the most popular people to be around. This is because of a number of documents that spoke ill about their methods and beliefs. When these documents started to suddenly go missing, a lot of people accused the Church of Scientology of breaking into certain government agencies and destroying them. Yeah, right, because the Church of Scientology are going to be responsible for one of the largest infiltrations of the United States government in the history of time. Oh, they actually did it? They actually did that? Really? So yeah, it turns out that the Church of Scientology are responsible for one of the largest infiltrations of the United States government in history. I always said it was true, I always had faith, and I was right all along. So there you go, bam. They really did not like anybody speaking ill of them, so they broke into 136 official government agencies, embassies, and various other establishments and destroyed any record that criticized or doubted their beliefs. Kind of extreme, lads. Take it easy, take it easy. So extreme, in fact, that the modern day Church of Scientology don't actually agree with those methods, and most members who have spoken out about it have said that it was not an effective operation. Number 6 is the Naira testimony. A 15-year-old girl who only provided her first name, Naira, gave a testimony on October 10th, 1990. In her testimony, she gave an emotional statement and said that after the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, she had witnessed soldiers take babies out of incubators and leave the babies to die. This testimony was cited numerous times by American politicians who utilized it to back Kuwait in the Gulf War. However, certain experts said that Naira's testimony seemed very forced and acted out. However, anyone who said this was more than likely shut down very quickly because of the sensitivity of the subject. But it was later revealed that those skeptics were correct. Her name was actually kept secret because she was the daughter of the ambassador to the United States for Kuwait, and she was more than likely acting on his behalf in order to gain sympathy from the United States and eventually receive military or financial funding. It was also later revealed that she took acting classes before this testimony, confirming it as a staged event. Number 5 is Operation Valkyrie. When Hitler was in power, certain people believed that his own militia would begin to turn against him. These theories were quickly dismissed due to the fact that most members of Hitler's party looked to him as some kind of a god. However, there was indeed a plan in 1944 where Hitler's own men tried to kill him. A general, a major, and a colonel, whose names I'll never be able to pronounce, developed a plan that consisted of killing Hitler so that German soldiers were free from their oath of loyalty. The assassination attempt took place on the 20th of July 1944, when Klaus von Stauffenberg, I told you I couldn't pronounce this, man. Anyways, he had a meeting with Hitler, right? And at around 12:30 he had a bit too much of the old Fosters, so he got up, took a piss, came back, except he had a bomb now. What? That is essentially the most simplified version of the story I can give. But around 10 minutes later, the bomb went off, he died and 2 of the soldiers in the room died. However, Hitler didn't, and I mean like literally the entire room was blown to pieces and he didn't die. What a dickhead. Number 4 is the Watergate scandal. Watergate was a major political scandal that occurred in 1972 when there was a break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters. People believed it was linked to the American president at the time, Richard Nixon, using dirty tricks to combat opposing parties. Nixon and his administration were like, "No, what are you talking about? We didn't do that. Stop." Except you did do that, you cheeky boys. Turns out Nixon's administration had paid 5 people to break into various establishments and bug their offices. It became known in history as one of the biggest American political scandals of all time, and the term Watergate is frequently used when talking about current political scandals. Number 3 is Russia's secret. The Soviet Union and the United States were in a space race between the years of 1955 and 1972, in which both nations tried to prove their supremacy in spaceflight. Both competitors had to be on their game, so it's not that surprising that certain documents detailing flaws weren't released until after the race was finished. Yuri Gagarin was the first man in space. However, it's not surprising that certain skeptics believed that there was no way that something like this could go down without a flaw. And they were correct, as Yuri Gagarin wasn't supposed to be the first man in space. Instead, it was supposed to be Valentin Bondarenko, a man who was in the same program as Gagarin, but based on reports and descriptions of him, he seemed more promising. It made sense for the program not to release this info, as they were in the middle of the space race, and Valentin Bondarenko died because of poor organization. So, skeptics were happy to be proven right when the information was released in 1980, 19 years after his death. Number 2 is the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was an iconic civil rights activist who was assassinated on April 4th of 1968. James Earl Ray was the person who was convicted for the assassination, and it was widely believed that he was the only person responsible for King's death. However, certain people, including King's family, didn't believe that this was the case. So, in 1999, King's family took Lloyd Jowers and other unspecified government agencies to court, and their suspicions turned out to be true. It turned out that government agencies had played a part in the death of Martin Luther King, and the perpetrator, James Earl Ray, was merely a hired hitman. And number 1, MK Ultra. Throughout the 20th century, the CIA were accused of doing some shady shit. However, there wasn't any solid evidence to confirm this. That was until Project MK Ultra came into the public attention in 1975. It turns out that the CIA had spent millions of dollars to try and find out how they could control the minds of those they wanted to. Of course, because they were trying to achieve such a difficult goal, it's not that surprising that the height of illegal activity went on. An example of this was Frank Olson, who was a United States Army biochemist and died under suspicious circumstances. At first, it was ruled as a suicide, until it was discovered that the CIA had given Olson LSD without him knowing. They also put patients into comas for weeks at a time so that they could experiment on them. Many of the documents were destroyed when people began to catch wind of Project MK Ultra, so we may never know how dark these experiments actually got. And that's it for this top 10. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button. I'll leave a link down below to another conspiracy based list I did. That one is the 10 craziest conspiracy theories ever created. Crazy stuff, man. I hope you enjoyed your scrambled eggs, and as always, until next time.